Welcome to the County Manager's Report. I'm Lloyd Higuera, and with me is Interim County Manager Larry Werner. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
And that title of Interim County Manager, you're not going to be wearing that too much longer, are you?
No, it sounds like it's going to end here fairly quickly. We are bringing forward for the September 4th meeting a recommended contract for the Board of County Commissioners to approve to retain Jim Nichols as the next county manager. And should that go well, it appears that his start date would be September 29th, which works just well because my contract ended at the end of September. So, you know, there's karma out there that makes all this come together. So hopefully it'll go smoothly and Jim will be on board. Just when we'll be able to see, you know, and listen about what he's done and doing, it sounds like he might be a pretty good fit.
Yeah, no, he interviewed very well with the county commissioners, so we'll have to see, you know, what happens.
Exactly.
It's kind of, you know, throw them in the pool and
exactly.
see what sink or swim. But the thing is, you're not going to be around but a day or two to kind of get him headed in the right direction.
And realistically, yeah, most people that go into this position really go into it with their own set of ideas on how to do things. And
sure.
It'd be the kind of thing that I'd offer out to say, you know, if there's any questions on what we did over the last 6 months, be happy to talk to you about it. But other than that, it's free reign. You know,
you grab your hat.
Exactly, exactly. It's just because everybody does things differently, so
yeah.
It's kind of, you know. So I'm not sure it helps to do that, but and there's the staff there is just wonderful in the county manager's office, and then also just, you know, everybody there. So as far as getting information and getting assistance and getting kind of shown the ropes, there's plenty of folks that can do that that'll work well with him. So.
Okay, well, we wish him the best, and we'll see how things go on the 4th of September. We've got a couple of meetings to cover. You were away for a bit, so we've got to cover the August 7th and the 21st meeting. And we'll start with that August 7th meeting, where commissioners introduced an ordinance prohibiting medical marijuana establishments in Douglas County. And this will require a second reading before it becomes official, but that's the direction Douglas County is moving in.
And that's correct, Lloyd. Based on the public hearings and the testimony and the I guess the sentiment gathered throughout the county, the different GIDs and towns, it was pretty overwhelmingly stated that they didn't feel that Douglas County needed to have its own medical marijuana establishments. There are, you know, Carson City's going to license them. I think Washoe County will probably license them, and so the ability to go and get medical marijuana is certainly reasonably available. It's just like going to do some other major medical things. You know, you can't do them all in Douglas County, and you have to go to some other places to get medical treatments or diagnostic activities, those kinds of things. So it was kind of felt that, yeah, you know, we really don't need that. So. And you're right, the first reading was held on May 7th, and it passed, and then the second reading will be on the 21st, no, on the 4th, sorry, on September 4th. And so far we've had no comment one way or the other as to on the second reading, so I'm thinking that'll pass fairly quickly.
Okay, well, the 2015 legislative session will begin in January. I wonder if this kind of thing will come up in that legislative session, you know.
I suspect it will. It was a very strong push, very powerful lobby that worked on the medical marijuana program with the legislature in the past. So I suspect that they're not finished yet. So
yeah, okay, will be one to watch. Also at that August 7th meeting, commissioners moved ahead with an ordinance to define an indoor gun range as a permitted use in Douglas County. Up to this point, it wasn't a permitted use.
In fact, it wasn't identified or defined, and that was part of the problem. There was an applicant that wanted to convert a building to an indoor gun range, which, from all practical purposes, probably is not a problem, but there was no particular category that this fell into. And I think there was an indoor recreation that it looked like they were trying to stuff it into that, and it just didn't fit. So with this ordinance, if it passes again on the 4th, the second reading, then it will establish indoor gun ranges in specific zoning areas as a special use permit. So there's an opportunity to make sure there's adequate parking and adequate noise protection and those kinds of things. So I think from what I heard at the commissioners' meetings on the discussion of this, that there's an interest to having indoor gun ranges. It's just that there was no box to put them in. So.
Right. Well, I assume the gentleman who brought this forward probably will be applying for that special use permit.
I would suspect so.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Also, East Fork Fire Chief Todd Carlini received his annual performance evaluation, and as usual, he received a superior from commissioners. He does a great job, doesn't he?
He does, and I know one of the requirements was for me as the interim county manager to kind of respond to the I guess the commissioners and the directors of the East Fork Fire and Ambulance District. I don't know what the official title is that Todd works for, but for our end of it, he's the emergency manager, and so I commented on that, and it's really been wonderful working with him. I've known Todd for quite a few years, and his family and stuff when we lived in Yerington many years ago. And as far as helping the county work through some of these most recent emergencies, he does a really good job of kind of keeping things going forward. So, well deserved.
And Douglas County is very fortunate to have him.
Yes, absolutely.
As our fire chief. Commissioners also approving an update to the Douglas County strategic plan with completed goals and newly added goals. I wonder if you could tell us about some of the completed goals, some of the things that commissioners have completed, and maybe some of these new goals.
Certainly, and also there will be a follow-up board meeting, and I believe it may be in October, where there will actually be a detailed summary of what they kind of went through their strategic plan, but just to kind of look at some of the ones, and I had these in order now, and I've got myself messed up here, but they've revised certain goals just to make the wording more appropriate. For example, there was an identify opportunities for more cost-effective services to the residents that through privatization and shared services. They add the shared services to kind of make it an all-encompassing program to look at how we can work with the private side. A completed goal is to review the investment policy for financial stability. That was done. There's a new goal to form an investment advisory committee. That'll be undertaken. A new goal to find opportunities to utilize technology in all the departments. And I think that's an ongoing goal, that we're continually looking at ways to work smarter, not necessarily harder. As you get reduced staff, there has to be ways to make things work better. And that's a constant point of discussion in staff meetings and through the technology information department.
Well, it kind of has to be with the technology changing constantly. I mean,
it does. Otherwise,
yeah.
You're left out in the cold, and you
you
just have no idea. And it's amazing on how you have to communicate with. If you don't get into the social media side of things, you're leaving out a huge sector of the population as far as getting information to and getting information from. So, we're working very hard to stay on top of that. Another revised goal was to get. It has to do with the state line and also actually with the valley too, on the transportation element, to look at the loop road and the bypass to kind of create a transportation strategy that makes that the main focus of some of the board programs. The concern is that both at the lake and in the valley here, if we don't do something with the truck traffic and the transportation through the centers of our business communities, we can never improve those. I mean, it's just, you've got to get the traffic out of there before you can see some really vitality brought into the areas and that sort of thing. So that's becoming a major goal, and we're currently looking at options that we might be able to fund these things and how you look at it, but all of it, again, long-range strategies, nothing really imminent. And then there was a revised goal for the natural environment resources, and that had to do with to do more with conservation. I know the bill in front of Congress in other areas, it was called a lands bill. In Douglas County, it's called a conservation bill, with the idea that you can preserve some of the lands that make Douglas County and Carson Valley so pretty. So the idea is to take some of these lands and through exchanges and disposition and taking the funds, end up acquiring spots. So those are the kinds of things we went through, and we went through several pages of those. Most of them that I saw were to really kind of refine the goal. And most of them as goals are pretty much ongoing. So the completed goals, there aren't very many because they're ongoing programs.
Sure.
So that kind of, I guess, would summarize it. Like I say, at the next meeting, it'll be a meeting in October, that they'll be bringing back a report that just kind of summarizes that in a memo form and kind of makes it easier to understand.
Okay. Well, also, commissioners approved an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation water bonds in the amount of $1.5 million to finance water projects. And what kind of projects are involved there?
That was for the Sierra Country Estates. I don't know if you remember, several months ago there was a discussion about how to improve the system. And one of the major things was an intertie and some well improvements. So this begins the funding process for that. It's an authorization up to $1.5 million, and once the engineering gets completed and the bidding gets done, then we'll know exactly what we're talking about. But the majority of it's for the Sierra Country Estates issue.
Well, Sierra Country Estates is a failed water system that the county had to take over. So it sounds like it needed a lot of updating and a lot of work.
It did. It was one of those things that it just really didn't get the maintenance it needed over the years, and then went into, I guess it went bankruptcy or foreclosure or something happened, but several years ago, that you're right, that the county then was required to take it over and start doing what was necessary under, I believe it was state health orders, to get it up to speed. So that's what this program does.
And again, it's one of those water systems that doesn't have that many customers on it.
No, it doesn't, and that makes it very difficult. Because of the programs that we're doing, though, I think there's going to be some debt forgiveness grants that come in from the state, so there's some ways that will try to mitigate some of the costs, but still, it's not a cheap project with so few customers.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner is also introducing an ordinance amending Douglas County Code. This is to allow a solar photovoltaic facility in Douglas County, and this is another one that wasn't on the books before.
That's correct, and basically, I guess it's safe to say it's generally for non-residential areas, and through the special use permit, it's ag, forest, public facilities, more of the large parcels that if somebody wants to get interested in photovoltaic energy generation, then you can certainly do that. But again, it's a permitted use through a special use permit process, which means that they have to apply, and there may be conditions set, and things like location and reflectivity and those kinds of things may be evaluated, but essentially allows it to happen.
I guess there's quite a bit of interest too in the ag community to maybe some of their non-productive lands could be used for a facility like that.
It certainly makes sense, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed it, different areas. I know the National Guard in Carson City, I think some of the school districts around have large arrays of solar panels. This would allow that to occur in different parts of the ag lands and forest, but under certain conditions. Sorry.
Well, in fact, you straightened me out on the building that Bentley is now redoing, retrofitting, right. And I thought they were building a third, fourth story on it, and you said, no, it's solar panels.
It will be solar panels.
And will the whole building be operated by solar, do you know? Or?
You know, that looks large enough that could certainly do a
it?
large portion of that, yes.
Yeah.
I would think that the answer to that would be yes, Lloyd, but I don't know for sure. But seeing the size of the array is certainly impressive. It will be screened by parapet walls and stuff, so what people are seeing today you won't actually see in the future. Right. But it's the same idea. It's a large structure for solar panels.
Yeah, I noticed that they're actually covering that up right now. The steel structure they've got up there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Very interesting. As Douglas County moves into the 21st century.
Exactly.
Slowly, but surely. Speaking of 21, August 21st meeting of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. We'll shift gears here and go on to that meeting. That was up at Lake Tahoe. And commissioners continued their discussion of consolidation of the county-owned water systems at Lake Tahoe, and also setting rates, too. And that drew quite a crowd. And people were there to see what was going on. And where did all that conversation go? Well,
interesting, yeah, because I think this is at least with my experience, I think it's just 3 times with Carl Rushmeyer, the Public Works Director, Utilities Director. I think it's about his 4th or 5th year on this project. But what came out of the meeting on the 21st was the fact that we still probably want to do a consolidation, and maybe we'll call it a financial consolidation, so that when you group these water systems together, you end up with a customer base of a little over 1,000 customers, which opens up areas where we can get grant funding and those kinds of things, whereas the 500, 200 size don't qualify, don't compete well for grant and low interest loans. So from that standpoint, the consolidation really makes sense. Where it got to be a little bit difficult was trying to then come up with a rate for the 3 different systems when they're so significantly different on what it costs to operate them. And that's where it got a little bit sideways. I think that the commissioner's goal was admirable. They were trying to look to see if there's any way that throughout the county there's a way to keep people's water rates less than $200 on a regular basis. And it's a little bit of a misnomer because I know some of us that live up in East Valley, ours are over $200, $300, but we're on meters and we can't control it. The ones up at the lake are non-metered, so they're a flat rate and they're very expensive. So a couple of things are happening there. They decided to go back to looking at the cost of what it costs to operate each one of the systems and develop a rate for each one of those 3 systems independently. So those within a particular system are paying their share of what it costs to operate their system, not anybody else's. And then ultimately move very fast to get in meters And we're looking at methods of doing that fairly quickly, of how we might do that, either with or independent of the rate study. There are other options of, like improvement districts and those kinds of things that might be appropriate for putting in the meter program. And then when you develop the rates, you can actually do it based on, a flat rate for this certain part of the service charge, but then a commodity rate based on usage, that sort of thing. So anyway, the goal was to go back, talk to the different water systems, tell them we're going to use a cost of service analysis and develop the rate based on that. And for Zeewood, the Zephyr Cove Water Utility District, that's what they were there for. And they wanted to do that, and they saw no problem with that. Their rate goes up about $20 a month, but it's what it costs. And the other two, though, are Cave Rock Upaway and Skyland. Skyland pretty much stays neutral with their system no matter which way it went. They always seem to kind of roll around the same rate. So they're probably okay. Cave Rock is the one that was at about $200 and some a month flat rate, and they were looking under the original scenario of consolidation to go down to maybe 160, 170, something like that. Under the cost of service, they might go down to like 195, from like 200 to 195, so not a significant drop. So we want to talk to those folks, and actually we'll be doing online surveys with them to try to get a sense of, is that okay for now? And instead of going for a 5-year rate, we'll go for a 2-year rate, and in 2 years we'll analyze what we need to do based on the infrastructure stuff. So the idea is come back with a rate that we can arguably say that's what it costs. You're not being subsidized, nor are you subsidizing anybody else, and we'll work hard to come up with something that makes it better for you within your system, but we need time. So long-winded answer.
No, it was a long discussion too.
Right.
You encapsulated it very nicely, and it seems like the commissioners want to be fair about this, but it really is difficult to appear to be fair when you have some people paying $300 or $400 and then some people paying $100, and it's a very difficult situation. It seems like the meters would kind of level the playing field, because here you are, you're using this much and you pay for that much.
Exactly, Lloyd, and that's been one of the problems. And I think the goal was initially to get a rate going for 3 or 4 years, or actually they were going to do it for 5 years, and then start building some engineering analysis to determine what the meter program would be, get that in, and then start doing more of the capital improvement stuff. But the problem was we had the rates going up and down over that 5-year period, and that really could create some problems as well. So this way we thought, no, we'll drop it back to the 2 years, get to the meters, so then we do develop the true cost with new infrastructure. It can be, a lot of it can be controlled by the user and how much water they actually use. So you were right, your analysis of the meters is extremely important.
Okay. Also, at that August 21st meeting, commissioners approved 2 resolutions declaring an emergency due to a severe weather event and flooding. That would be July 20th and August 6th. So the commissioners are moving ahead. I know also a meeting was held out in Johnson Lane. I don't know if you had an opportunity to attend that, but
yes, and on the emergency declarations, the process there is that local government, if it has a emergency or disaster, whatever you want to call it, then they need to declare an emergency. Then it is then passed on to the State Department of Emergency Management, who then do an evaluation, and if they concur then with that, then it goes on to the governor's office to see whether or not it warrants having a statewide declaration. If there's a statewide declaration, then there's access to direct funding, low interest loans. The direct funding mainly comes to the point of the public infrastructure. It does not generally go to, in fact, I don't know of any of it going to private, but it does make potentially private or low interest loans available for actual damage to structures. None of this repairs landscaping and stuff. So anyway, the thought was, well, let's put all these 3 together and see if there's any way that we can kind of take these 3 different storm events, the first 2 that we're doing this last meeting, and the one we did the meeting before, and try to couple those in together, see if it passes the threshold for being a event that meets the threshold for the state. I don't think it's going to. We don't have those numbers yet, but in my experience, there needs to be significant public damage before that occurs. And in reality, we've not had a lot. We've had a lot of cleanup. Although it's not inexpensive, it just doesn't, I don't think it'll pass the threshold of being to a county-wide, stretch the resources to the minimum, those kinds of things. But we're pursuing it because it may open up avenues for folks. So that's where we're at. I
Have to
guess
wait
kind
and
of,
see.
yeah.
And I kind of asked you two questions. I
Right.
kind of compressed them both together, but how are the people in Johnson Lane feeling?
The meeting was held by Commissioner Bonner and Commissioner Penzel, and the only staff person that went was our GIS coordinator. And I really didn't go, nor did I want staff to go, because we have nothing to offer anybody yet. We understand the issues. We pretty much were out there and observed all the areas. We're in the process of cleanup. We need to know what their emergency declaration is going to do anything. We need to know, one of the biggest things we need to know are the size of the storms that occurred. If they're within our design criteria, then the county has a problem because it should have handled it. But we suspect from what we're seeing today, and actually the National Weather Service is working on this for us, is these storms far exceeded anything that we ever saw in this area. And if that's the case, there's nothing the county could have done that would have prevented this. We simply don't design our facilities that big. So I saw really no reason to go out and meet with those folks at this stage, because I think it was just, and what we got back was a list of people very angry about what happened again. But I think it would have really irritated them had we said, we don't know. We can't help you. We just don't know yet. So I talked to the commission and said, it's too early. And I really don't want staff out there to just get beat up because there's nothing we can offer the community yet. So I said, once we get this data, then we can sit down and meet with folks and say, okay, this happened, this is why that happened, here's what we can do in the future, here's what we can't do in the future, and really have something of substance to talk to them. The problem is going to still be, number one, we probably never could have prevented it. And number two, there won't be anybody to pay for the damage. And I think those two questions are probably key in everybody's mind and are probably going to be the ones that are not going to get a satisfactory answer. So.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait and see
Right.
what the data says. Also at that meeting, commissioners did accept the resignation of Douglas County Clerk Treasurer Ted Thron, and directed the county manager's office to begin accepting applications for those seeking appointment to that job. So that's how the process works.
Correct.
Because it's very unusual. He's an elected official, so
Right.
there are, I imagine, guidelines you have to follow. That
Statutory requirements. And if the Board of County Commissioners does not appoint somebody to fulfill the remaining term of the incumbent, then the governor takes over the process.
Oh.
So we're working very quickly. We kind of announced that we'll accept people that are interested through this Friday. It was at the 28th of August. And get a hold of our HR department. There's a ways to apply online, and it's not really significant because basically you have to be a Douglas County resident, you have to be able to vote, and I think that's about it. But still, we'd like to have background so we can kind of give the commissioners something. And then on the 21st will be 18th, 21st. I'm getting my dates mixed up. I think it may be September 18th.
I haven't got my calendar handy.
September 18th. It is September 18th because the next meeting is the 4th. And whoever applies will be interviewed at that meeting. So what we'll do is we'll set up interview times that the board can sit there and kind of interview like they did for county manager, and then make an appointment. There has been some discussion about, well, why don't we do a short-term appointment and then go through this process and really go through a vetting and then make a final appointment. The problem is we don't have that ability to do so because the law says for the unexpired term. So that goes to January 5th, I believe is the first Monday in January. And then, interesting enough, Ted is the only candidate on the ballot for this upcoming election. So he will be elected, and then he either can decide to take the job again, or he'll have to submit another letter of resignation. And if he does, then we go through that process again. So we again go through the, take names, that kind of stuff,
Sure.
and go through that. And then that person has to run in 2 years, so it gets back on a 4-year cycle.
I see.
It's really strange, but it's
Boy.
all laid out by statute, and it's causing some consternation. So.
Jumping through those hoops.
Yes.
Okay, we will have one more from that meeting of the 21st. Commissioners approved a contract with the University of Nevada for a 2-year cooperative technical assistance agreement for pavement technology at a cost of $90,000 for the 2 years. Now, this is something right up your alley.
I love it.
This
Yeah,
is your
exactly.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, University of Nevada, its asphalt group is internationally renowned for their knowledge about dealing with asphalt. And we've said, we've got these folks sitting right at our doorstep, and we're having all kinds of issues, I'm sure, as people drive the community with cracks, with asphalt cracks. And it's not just Douglas County, it's everywhere. And we're trying to figure out, first of all, what's causing that? Why are these so significant over the last few years? And then what are we going to need to do and change our engineering design to prevent these in the future. So we thought, you know what, it really makes sense to get the university down here, and it's kind of twofold, as they can come down and do site visits with us, take a look at our methods, then go back and take a look if there's a better method to do as far as the asphalt mix goes, or how do you place it, or those kinds of things, or where the problem lies, and try to do it. And I think Carson City did the same thing, and I don't know if anybody else is doing it at this stage either, but it's just a tremendous resource for us because it's such a huge public investment. The asphalt roadways are a huge, huge investment, and we need to figure out how to protect them as best we can.
And I guess the university has technical expertise as well as equipment that Douglas County could only dream about.
Exactly. I mean, it's a whole, just like anything else, it's a whole field into itself, and you really got to love asphalt to get into this stuff. And that's to me, it was kind of like a black art. I just don't know how it works.
Okay, well, I think we pretty well covered those two meetings. We do have another meeting coming up that it never stops. We got a meeting on September 4th. Do you have any? You mentioned a couple of things that are going to be on that agenda, but anything else?
Just to quickly go through them, I think those are the key things. We got the ordinances on second reading. We got a couple of zoning issues on first reading. Most of them had to do with development agreements, extensions, and some pretty routine stuff. We got the county manager's contract, and we also have the rates for the valley. The water and sewer rates are on for approval for the valley water and sewer system. So, that's been kind of an ongoing discussion. It's kind of quieted down, but now it's back again on September 4th. So there's been no change in there. It's been a pretty routine increase. It was like 3.25%. We still think that's a valid percentage. And so staff is still recommending that we go forward with that. And that's been where the commissioners have stood so far too. So the rest of it's pretty mundane, routine stuff, but I think those are the key issues.
Okay, very good. And so we'll wrap up this edition of the County Manager's Report. I guess the month of September will be the last time we'll have a chance to talk with you about the
I think it will,
county.
Lloyd. Yes.
Yeah, and so you should be leaving the end of September.
I should, yeah. Like I say, my contract ends in September, and the new county manager should be on at around that same time frame. So I think it'll work out just extremely well for everybody.
Okay, well, Larry, again, thank you for all the information you've shared with us here on the County Manager's Report. I'm Lloyd Higuera for Interim County Manager Larry Werner, and we'll see you next time on the County Manager's Report.